Hey everyone, I'm John Lynn, the founder and chief editor at Healthcare IT Today. We're excited to bring you another in our series of interviews with top leaders in health IT. And our guest today is Robert Connely. He's Global Industry Market Leader for Healthcare at Pega. Welcome, Robert.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so before we dive into today's topic, we're here at Pega World. We want to learn about Pega in healthcare, but before we do that, tell us a little bit about yourself and Pega.
Sure. So I've been in the healthcare industry about 40 years. Probably the gray hair, where that came from. Been working with major companies, startups, and things like that. So pretty much gotten exposed to the industry for quite a few years. Pega is an interesting organization. It's been around for about 40 years. Most people don't realize that. And it's been growing in the marketing space in many industries, healthcare being one of the more recent. But here's where I think it may have some of the greatest play that we're seeing. So that's our background, and we're pretty much a well-kept secret, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting to see and hear here at Pega World all of the different ways people are using the Pega solutions. But what would you say are some of the common use cases you see in healthcare organizations as they leverage Pega's technology?
Right. I think we originally started in business process management, so we were more on the back-end system. So you were seeing us doing a lot of workflow automation, things like that in the business processes. Over time, as the technology evolved, we became more known in the call centers. So we're actually using the same technology to basically integrate the channels, the chats, the websites, and things like that with the back-end systems to make the job of the call agent, that much better. As we've evolved, we've adapted AI technologies more than 2 decades ago. So before it was a buzzword, we were actually applying AI in very many different areas. So today you'll see us in the payer space and the provider space and in the life science space as we use this technology that we've created in these areas around process automation generally.
Yeah, so let's talk about that because it is a big topic. It's the topic du jour of all of healthcare, I'd say, especially healthcare technology. But
Indeed.
How is Pega incorporating AI and, of course, now generative AI into your products?
Yeah, I think the thing about AI, there's the magic of it and there's the fear, uncertainty, and doubt aspects of it. But just like anything, you have to almost limit its use to get the greatest value out of it. So if you see how Pega implements AI, in various different flavors, from generative AI that you mentioned all the way down to adaptive AI, predictive AI, and natural language processing, all those things. What's happening in our world as we bring these things together, it's now starting to attach itself to every business aspect of a payer's environment, from acquisition and onboarding to set up their products, to set up their sales, to onboard their agents and brokers, all the way through engaging members and the real-time interaction and everything in between. So that's where you'll see Pega mostly. We're in every major payers organization. I mean, 10 of the top 10 payers in the US use our technology. Not so much in the provider space. We do with some major, large the provider organizations, and that's part of the next sort of area that we'll get more and more into, but that's where you'll find us at more today. And again, some in life science, usually the large pharma companies that may use us for clinical trials or for product development, things in that area.
Interesting. And on the provider side, where do you see that growing? Is it going to be the marketing people using it? Is it going to be,
That's an interesting question. Yeah, it started out in the marketing department for sure. But what we're seeing now is this acceleration toward more of this holistic patient engagement, this where the world has been trying to go. In fact, it's sort of the centerpiece of value-based care. And so by using AI technologies especially, what we find is we're able to take what we've proven to work with care managers, care navigators, basically helping patients do the things they're supposed to do, and now having AI augment those people so that we can actually address a much larger population than what we can deal with today with just using human navigators and managers. So this is where we see a big play that the providers are looking for, is that sort of relationship. So as we see the industry sort of amalgamate to, you hear the term payvider a lot, right? Where the payers and the providers have a much more symbiotic relationship as opposed to the more adversarial sort of engagements they have today, if I dare say. So that's what we see AI really helping, especially in automating and doing things that predict and help a more, if you will, a proactive experience with members. So we should be able to use technology to help them not do the things that they should not do and to better educate and train them on what they should do. So we see the future sort of moving in that direction.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting you talk about doing the things they should and not doing the things they shouldn't. One of the fears that you addressed, you talked about the fear of AI is hallucinations.
Yeah.
How is Pega approaching this issue of hallucinations in your solution?
Well, there's a couple of ways. I can go into the technical definition in a minute, but part of it is limiting the use of it. Right? Think of AI as a 13-year-old in a room with a crayon. You want to limit the walls it can write on. So what we do is through our structure of how Pega at its very core organizes data. We organize it in what we call cases. Cases are basically the data you need to accomplish a job, a process. That's the data that I need. These are the people that are going to use it, and this is the thing that they're going to do. If you're in that environment already, adding AI just to do a little piece of that. For example, I know the answer to my question. I just want you to format it in a way that's appropriate for this listener or this reader. So that's the way you'll see us using things like generative AI. It's not to create something new, but it's actually to use its power to do something very small but very tangible to that user. Cognition, how do I read something and understand it? Well, it needs to be in my language. It needs to be in my syntax and my level, and that's what we do with this sort of application. Now, you talk about hallucinations. Hallucinations is an AI feature. It's what it does. It doesn't think about these things. It's really just doing probabilistic determinations of what's the next answer. And so, again, what we do is we use a technique when we use generative AI called RAG, R-A-G, a retrieval augmented generation. And the idea is that you're not letting the large language model do all the work. You're basically giving it the answer to the questions. And then you're asking it to give you a formatted response back. You're not asking it to be creative at this point in time. And so that's how we restrict hallucinations. We just don't put it in a place that they could use it. The second thing that we do, though, is there's always a human in the middle when an generative AI makes a decision. So you'll see it using it in places where an agent will be on a call with a client, and suddenly AI will pop up a suggested response. Well, obviously, it's up to that person to decide that response should be taken. And so what it's doing is it's helping that person do the job without taking away their responsibility of making the final decision.
Interesting. Yeah, I heard your CEO talk about how it's being used for language and summarization, not for knowledge. I thought that was a good way to describe what you just said.
Exactly. So, use it for what it's good for. And AI, quite frankly, is great for scaling simple things. It can do some fantastic things, but if you start looking at it closely, it's not quite as great as you might think when it comes to creating things. But what we find is that using it for practical use cases to help augment people, to help automate simple things that can be done easily by humans, but becomes mundane when they do it and expensive. So that's where we see it mostly.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you talk about it using AI creatively, because one of the biggest announcements discussed at the conference is called Blueprint, which is kind of using AI to creatively scale up the processes, as I understand it. But talk about what is Blueprint and how do you think healthcare is going to use it?
Yeah, well, it's almost like giving the developer the tool to talk to the business. So it's not designing it for you necessarily, it's sort of guiding you through that decision itself, starting with experts like myself. I contributed to that, and what it would look for and how it would build it. So it's not doing the creation for you, it's actually doing the layout of it. And then saying, well, if this is what you're doing, then I know through my what I've learned is it will require these personas, this data, these types of cases, these types of interfaces, and that's what it's built on. So it's really doing, again, very little things, very small things, but at a level and a speed that's just astounding.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned chatbots in a couple of different, whether it's with the call center agent accessing knowledge through some sort of chatbot, it sounds like. How do you see healthcare organizations using Pega and this idea of chatbots?
Yeah, I think the area that it's really shining, and you'll see more and more of this, is in the patient engagement side of the world.
So on the website or on the app?
We call it omni-channel. So basically, we don't just interact with one channel. We might in a moment, we may have a chat conversation, but then we'll go to a website, then we'll pick up the phone. So these are all channels. And so what we do is we sit behind all of those channels. So you don't know, you might get a chat with somebody and they say, well, I need to call on this one. I don't want to just type in, so they'll pick up the phone and call. We've got to make sure that conversation's always tied together. And so this is the way that Pega approaches that. So if we look at these channels, we're behind all those. So we have a tool we call the VX API, which is the way we sort of allow our organizations to sort of express how they want output, and then the system formats it, the treatment of that to each channel. So there's a chat interface. There's also a website markup. There may be, a voice AI response, things like that we see. So that's how we sort of bridge those gaps when it comes to those channels and how we do it. So sitting behind those channels is one of our main points to have this sort of experience. So regardless of where you go, you didn't break your conversation.
Interesting. As I think about all of these technologies, and even just the simple idea of a CRM in healthcare, right?
Simple idea.
Which was sadly foreign to many healthcare organizations, because anyway, we won't dive into that. But I look at it and I say, is healthcare really ready to put the patient at the center of this engagement experience? I heard in one session today, someone said, we're really good at campaign marketing, but we aren't good but we need to move to one-to-one personal engagement.
I think if the business evolved itself, it might say, this is great, we'll just use it for marketing. But what we're seeing now is this overarching pressure of value-based care. And that's what's driving it right now, the realization that at some point in time, we're not going to just be able to pay for services because that's just the way the patient showed up. We're going to have to be much more proactive in helping them not drive the cost of care where it's going. And that's where it's moving away from the marketing thing, although it evolved there. It clearly came out of marketing.
Sure.
But now applying that same technology more in the journey that a member is taking or a patient's taking becomes much more powerful. Because think about it, you're still doing the same thing. You're trying to influence their behavior. You're trying to do the right things. It's no different than what marketing are trying to do. So we're just applying it to a much more complicated, a much more dynamic, and something that doesn't stratify well. With marketing, we can send out a campaign to a whole bunch of people, but healthcare, it's individual. That's the reason you have to have some of these advanced technologies that allow us to really create a personalized experience for people, regardless of where they go, what they do, and when they do it. And besides, with the way we do it, we remember what it did, which is what creates hallucinations. I don't know what I said before. Now we do, because we keep track of all that and we manage it. So it's a combination of AI, case management, all these things come together to make it actually appropriate for healthcare as it moves toward value-based care to do it much more safely.
Wow. Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about value-based care. I said two things a lot of times. First is that value-based care, if you want to do value-based care, you need a relationship with the patient.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't, you're not going to be able to do it, right?
Right.
And then, you also look at value-based care and you say, okay, if I want to be successful at it, that's a marketing problem. It's not a healthcare problem. There's some healthcare components to it to know when you should market and who you should market to and how. But once you figure that out, it's a marketing problem.
Yeah, and once you get somebody and you understand their journeys, and it's not just one, we're also on multiple journeys at once, right? And when you can understand that, then you're far, far better able to market correctly, right? So now I know what you need. I don't have to guess. So many of our clients use this to sort of control their outbound messages to their people. Because, obviously, if you're in a situation and you're paying claims, if they send you a request to do something that obviously shows they don't know what you're going through, that's a bad thing. So by understanding where that member and that patient is in their journeys, it's going to accelerate marketing to a level to be much more, again, proactive and much more predictive as far as what we need to apply, when we need to apply it. So this is where we see it going.
Absolutely. Robert, this was a lot of fun. I appreciate you sharing some insights and perspectives about Pega and your work in healthcare. And thanks everyone for watching and listening. If you want to find more great healthcare IT content like this, be sure to check it out at healthcareittoday.com or search for Healthcare IT Today on your favorite podcast applications. Thanks, Robert.